Evergrande, one of China's largest property developers, is currently on the brink of collapse. That is what we're going to be breaking down in today's video. This is not something I would usually cover on the channel, as to be honest, things in the wider macro environment are well above my pay grade and totally out of my control. But due to my recent investment made within Alibaba and also JD.com, this event has spurred my interest a little bit, and I have been doing some reading and some research about it all. So that's what we're going to be breaking down in today's video. So what does Evergrande do? So Evergrande's core business is in real estate and property development, and it's the second largest property developer in China by sales. They do have some other arms to the business as well that they've started dabbling into. Industries which include electric vehicles, healthcare services, customer products, video and television production units, and also even a theme park. So they do have a few other things that they dabble in as well, but predominantly the core of their business is in property development and real estate sales within China. They have 1,300 real estate projects in over 280 cities in China currently. Its property service management arm is involved in nearly 2,800 projects across more than 310 cities in China. So how did Evergrande get itself into this position they find themselves in today? Basically, over the last few years, as China's economy has been booming and Evergrande has been rapidly growing the business, they have had to do this by taking on more and more debt and acquiring more assets along the way. Now today, they currently have over $300 billion sitting on the balance sheet in debt. This is making them the most indebted property developer in the world as it currently stands today. So due to the staggering $300 billion sitting on the balance sheet of Evergrande at the moment, they have been struggling to pay back their suppliers, and also over the next few weeks they have current interest payments on all that debt coming up due, and they've said recently over the last few weeks that to their investors that they may default on some of that debt which is currently owing on the balance sheet, and then this would in turn have a snowball effect and may start defaulting on other debt as well. And this is the big concern for Evergrande at the moment. They basically have too much debt and they don't have enough cash flow coming in to pay back that debt. So who will be affected is if Evergrande were to start defaulting on this debt that they currently have due. Firstly, the banks, okay? The people that have lent money to Evergrande over this last number of years would be greatly affected by this. And this would in turn start spilling out into the financial markets, possibly not just to China, it could even start spilling out into other markets as well. We don't know how far this could go if they were to start defaulting on that debt. So that's number one, the banks would be greatly affected by this, or anyone that has lent large amounts of capital to the company to grow. The second group of people that this will affect will be the home buyers and investors of Evergrande. This is people that are buying properties maybe off the plan from Evergrande, or investors that have bought shares with Evergrande. This will be affecting them dramatically as well. There are a number of protests going on throughout China at the moment where people are lining up at Evergrande's headquarters protesting, saying they want their money back as they put their life savings into Evergrande and they're waiting for a house to be completed or something along those lines. So this will greatly affect them if they were to start defaulting on that loans that is due as well. The last group of people that will be affected by this will be the suppliers and the contractors that have been working alongside Evergrande over these last number of years in order to grow the business. If they can't afford to pay back a lot of these suppliers and contractors, then this will affect a lot of different industries within China. Currently, as it stands, out of that 300 billion that they have owing in debt, 37 of which is payable back to suppliers and contractors of Evergrande. So another big part of the parcel there as well. And there has been examples in the past where Evergrande has been trying to pay back a paint supplier with just offloading some of their properties that aren't even finished in form of payment for the work that he has done. So that's the last group of people that will be affected by this as well. So as you can see, it can greatly affect a lot of different parties if Evergrande were to start defaulting on this amount of debt owing, and if the CCP doesn't jump in and intervene and somehow restructure some of the debt that is currently owing. Lastly, we're going to have a look at a small clip from the ABC here in Australia to hear the thoughts from an actual economist who's on the ground in Shanghai at the moment, to hear her take on what she thinks may happen here.
How much of an impact would a default by Evergrande have on the housing market and in turn China's economy, and how likely is it that the government might step in and intervene?
We think it's very likely that the government will intervene. What that will look like is not that certain. Perhaps it will be the government serving as a kind of a broker and authorizing state-owned enterprises to come in and kind of rescue Evergrande at this time. However, Evergrande is part of a larger ecosystem. It has projects in some 230 different cities in China, which involve lots of different suppliers. And then, of course, one of the issues that you're seeing with the protests you alluded to is that there are a lot of home buyers, key components of China's rising urban middle class, which are crucial to government support, who are very upset because the way a lot of these investors became involved with Evergrande is they pay for properties up front before they've been constructed. So they've already paid for homes that they're not yet living in and that now might not be completed were Evergrande to collapse. So what I think we'll see is not an absolute collapse, but a government's effort to have kind of a controlled unspooling to avoid, as you alluded to, a Lehman Brothers movement, where we've been teetering to avoid an absolute catastrophe.
And of course, given how big the company is, we're bound to see ripple effects even abroad.
Yes, I think that's an important point. There's been increasing exposure to Chinese debt from global investors. Actually, some $21 billion of that debt is held in foreign currency debts, largely by foreign creditors. So while the majority of Evergrande's creditors are its suppliers and home buyers and kind of smaller creditors, there is a significant amount that is exposed to the global economy.
And even if the Chinese government comes to Evergrande's aid, it won't be the end of the company's woes, will it?
It certainly will not. This, again, as I mentioned earlier, alludes to one of the big structural challenges remaining for China's economy and actually key to resolve if it's going to continue its development growth. Addressing the really seeming interminable amount of bad corporate debt in the economy is something that China has been trying to do for many years. But this government is, of course, very concerned with stability, both social and financial. And that is kind of what you're seeing with the Evergrande situation.
So what's being discussed behind the scenes and how do you think this will pan out in the coming days?
I think, the issue at the moment is how the financial advisors that the company has brought on board will help it to navigate through this process. You've seen in the past that rather than letting a collapse or a complete default, there'll be some conglomeration of speaking with regulators, coming up with contingency plans, deciding, which pieces might be allowed to default or fail. I think this might be the tip of the iceberg for property sector defaults in China. China's had a very effervescent, but perhaps overheated property market. It's a key part of China's economy, accounting for nearly 28% of the economy. So there are larger implications. How exactly they'll play out is still uncertain. But because of the connectivity and to the global economy, of course, it's not just people within China who are watching. It's people far beyond as well.
There we have it today, guys. Just a very basic overview and look at Evergrande's huge amount of debt. Couple of key takeaways from today's video. One thing we must always do before we look at any company before making an investment is how much debt the company has. This can greatly affect the company, like we're seeing in Evergrande's case today. There is a couple of different ways this could go. Either Evergrande starts defaulting on the debt and just has a huge snowball effect and would cover across many different markets in China, could even start spilling out into many different markets around the world. Or the other option is the CCP does jump in there and do something to help them out, either take on some of that debt or restructure that debt in a way, or something around those lines. Look, it's well above my pay grade to make a call on which way it's going to go. But if I was a gambling man, I would say that the CCP will probably jump in and try and help out Evergrande in some way, shape or form by taking on some of the debt or restructuring the debt in a way. But like I said, it's well above my pay grade to make a call on it. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you think that the CCP will jump in and help them out, or will they let them start defaulting on this? But if you start letting them default on it, who knows how far this will go. Could have huge effects if they do start defaulting on that debt. As like I said earlier, it could start snowballing, not just within China, could even start spilling out into many markets around the world. But that's just my take on it. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up today's video. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did get some value, please do us a favor before you go. Hit that like button, helps me out a ton. With that said, guys, stay safe and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers, guys.